Back with a new video here, and it is going to be my top 10 favorite metal bands. There's hundreds of great bands to choose from, but only 10 can make it. It's very hard to narrow it down. I'll give some honorable mentions after I say who I have for number 2, and of course, if you've been following the channel since the beginning, you'll know that I already did this video once. Like the third video I did not like the way it turned out, so I am redoing it now to make it better. Here we go. Starting the list off at number 10 is going to be Slayer. Now, I have another video I did where I ranked Slayer's albums from worst to best, so you can check that out. I won't talk about them too much. Everybody knows about Slayer. They're amazing thrash metal from the USA. My favorite album by them is Seasons in the Abyss. But a lot of really great stuff, especially the first 5 albums, and then God Hates Us All is an amazing album that came out in 2001. About a ton of great stuff. Tom Araya, Jeff Hanneman, Dave Lombardo, and Kerry King, the classic lineup. Pretty amazing. So yes, number 10, Slayer. In at number 9 is going to be Overkill, another great American thrash metal band. Somewhat overlooked. They're obviously not as commercially successful as Slayer or Megadeth or any of those other big thrash metal bands from the USA, but they did pretty well for themselves. They've released 19 albums total. First one came out back in 1985 called Field of Fire. Their most recent one came out this year called Wings of War, and I'd say my favorite album by them is probably Horoscope, which I have up on the wall back there. Came out in 1991. But so 19 albums since 1985, that's pretty much a machine right there. Very consistent releasing albums and a lot of quality stuff there. They've never released a bad album, if you ask me. So 19 pretty good albums, I'd say. And then, you have Bobby Blitz and Dee Dee Verney are the only 2 consistent members that have been on every single album. But, yeah, really good band from the USA. Pretty overlooked. Overkill, number 9. Taking the number 8 spot is W.A.S.P. Now, W.A.S.P. is a really great band. They get mislabeled as glam metal a lot. Not that there's anything wrong with glam metal. I just think W.A.S.P. is straight up classic heavy metal. Now, their debut album, which I have up on the wall back there, you can like halfway see it, is definitely one of the best metal debuts of all time. I'd rank it in the top 5. Amazing album from start to finish, and their first 5 albums, all really great. They had a few not so good albums like throughout the mid to late 90s, and then the run of albums they had in the 2000s, Unholy Terror, Dying for the World. You had the Neon Gods Part 1 and 2, not great, but then you had Dominator, Babylon, and then this album, their most recent right here I have on vinyl, Golgotha. Pretty good album. So a lot of really great stuff to go through with W.A.S.P. and Blackie Lawless, an amazing vocalist, helps give them a really unique sound. So yes, they're definitely in my top 10 without question. W.A.S.P. number 8. In at number 7 is going to be Black Sabbath. Now, obviously, Black Sabbath is one of the most influential bands, if not the most influential band in metal history. A ton of really great stuff from all of the eras. I have to say this every time I talk about Black Sabbath. There's more to Black Sabbath than just the Ozzy era material, folks. A ton of great stuff with Ronnie James Dio on vocals, Glenn Hughes on vocals, Ian Gillan on vocals, Tony Martin especially on vocals. Ton of great stuff with those guys. Maybe even their best album With Tony Martin, you got Headless Cross, could be their best album. Heaven and Hell with Ronnie James Dio. Probably between those two for me, which one I think is Black Sabbath's best. Not quite sure at the moment, but two amazing albums. Doesn't mean the Ozzy stuff is bad. Still a lot of really good stuff with him. Just this other stuff definitely deserves some attention too, because, you know, Ozzy only sang on 9 of their 19 albums, so I don't understand how Ozzy is Sabbath when he only sang on less than half of their albums. Meanwhile, you have Tony Iommi, who played on every single album, all 19. So if you ask me, Tony Iommi is Black Sabbath, a beast, one of the greatest guitar players of all time. So yeah, number 7, Black Sabbath, next. Number 6 is going to be King Diamond. Now, King Diamond, the singer, has the two bands, obviously, Merciful Fate and the King Diamond Band. I prefer King Diamond, the band, to Merciful Fate. There's more albums, and overall there's just better stuff. But, you know, Fatal Portrait and I'd say The Eye are my top 2 favorites. But, you know, obviously Abigail is their most famous album. A lot of people like to say this is their best. It's definitely up there. Really good stuff. They've released 12 albums total. Their most recent came out in 2007, so it's been a while. Give Me Your Soul was the album that came out back then, but that's a really good album too. The Spider's Lullaby. Pretty much everything has good stuff on it, obviously. I'd probably say The Graveyard's the weakest album, but a ton of really good stuff throughout the discography you can go around and listen to. Andy LaRocque has been on every single album, plays guitar, really great guitarist, and obviously King Diamond. He has a pretty unique voice, can hit some really high notes. It's not really everybody's style, but I think it's pretty good. It's really impressive what he can do with his vocals. So yeah, definitely one of my favorite bands. Number 6, King Diamond. Into the top 5 now, and it's really close for me between the number 5 and number 4 bands I have, but I think I'm going to stick with Loudness being number 5. An amazing band, best band from Japan. They're an absolute machine when it comes to releasing albums, 27 total since their first one came out back in 1981. First one was called The Birthday Eve, and their most recent album in 2018 was called Rise to Glory. Those are both really good albums, a ton of really good albums from them throughout their discography, but a couple highlights that are underrated for people to listen to, I'd say, are The Everlasting, which came out in 2009. Really good album. Their self-titled album from 1992. Great album. Soldier of Fortune from 1989 with Mike Pescara on vocals. You may know him from being in Yngwie Malmsteen's band or the band Obsession. Really good vocalist, and obviously I'd say their best and most popular album is Thunder in the East, but a lot of people just know them for like that one album when they have 27 albums to like listen to. Listen to more of their stuff than just Thunder in the East. Ton of great stuff to choose from. Akira Takasaki on guitar, one of the greats of all time. Minora Nihara is their most well-known vocalist, who was like their classic 80s vocalist. Came back in the 2000s, has been with them since. So, and they also have the original bass player still. His last name is Yamashita. I'm not quite remembering what his first name is right now, but so they have 3/4 of their original lineup still with them today. So they're still touring, pumping out albums. I'm sure they have another one on the way. Amazing band. Loudness, number 5. Number 4 is going to be Iron Maiden, obviously one of the biggest and best metal bands of all time. 15 albums total. First one came out back in 1980, self-titled. First 2 were with Paul Di'Anno. Good stuff there. Then they have Bruce Dickinson for a decent while, and then Bruce Dickinson left. They get Blaze Bayley. Blaze Bayley albums weren't great, but definitely some good stuff on there. Then Bruce comes back in the 2000s, which the 2000s stuff gets a lot of unfair hate, I think, especially the first three. Brave New World, Dance of Death, and A Matter of Life and Death. Some people like to give those albums shit, but I think they're all pretty dang good. And then you have The Final Frontier and The Book of Souls. Not great albums, but not that bad either. So, yeah, definitely amazing band. Iron Maiden, number 4. Number 3 is Pantera. I have a Dimebag Darrell shirt on right now. I have the tattoo. Easily one of my favorite guitar players of all time. An absolute beast. You know, they had 9 albums total. A lot of really good stuff. Even in the 80s, I think. A lot of really good material back then that gets unfairly hated on. I Am the Night, a really great album from 1985. Power metal, Projects in the Jungle, Metal Magic even has some decent stuff on it. But my favorite, without question, is Cowboys from Hell. Top 5 album for me of all time. But all their stuff is good, and I need to rank their albums soon. I watched a video recently from a guy who goes by the name Oldhead, Texas. So you can definitely check that guy's channel out. He's good at talking about this stuff too. But, so yes, Pantera, number 3 favorite band of all time. The greatest metal band from England, Judas Priest, number 2, the Metal Gods, amazing band, obviously. Pretty much everybody loves them. Rob Halford, I'd say, is the greatest vocalist of all time. Glenn and KK, amazing guitar duo. They don't have those guys anymore, unfortunately, but back when they had them, great guitar duo. Scott Travis since 1990, great drummer, and then Ian Hill on bass. Yeah, he's there. And then you have, I'd say my favorite album by them is Painkiller. A lot of really great stuff, even underrated stuff such as Jugulator with Tim Ripper Owens, Redeemer of Souls, a really great newish album. Firepower is pretty good, but not as good as Redeemer of Souls. So yeah, number 2, Judas Priest. And before I get to number 1, I'm going to say several honorable mentions. You know, so many bands I thought about. Cradle of Filth. Great band. Obviously Exodus, Rat, Dokken. What do I got here? So many great bands. I've been listening to a lot of black metal recently. I wouldn't say like these bands are super close to making it, but you know, I like Ancient and Immortal, and I'd say Dark Fortress are probably my favorite black metal bands. Also Bathory. Some really great stuff there. I'm going to try to do a top 10 black metal albums and top 10 black metal bands soon probably. So look out for that. So without further ado, number 1, here we go. In at number 1 is Megadeth. They are easily my favorite band, without question. They have been for about the last 10 years since I got into heavy metal back in maybe like 2008-ish when I was like 12 years old. But yeah, they have 16 albums total. First one came out in 1985, Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good, all the way up through Dystopia in 2016. Tons of great stuff to choose from. They're working on a new album right now. Should be done pretty soon, hopefully out by the end of this year or early next year, as long as Dave Mustaine gets through his cancer all right, so hopefully he's doing well with that. My favorite album by them is definitely Rust in Peace. That's the greatest album of all time. You have Peace Sells. That's top 5 album of all time. You have Countdown to Extinction. That's top 15 album of all time. So tons of elite material by them. Endgame, United Abominations, 2 great albums from the 2000s. So they've been very consistent. The best lineup, of course, you have Marty Friedman, Nick Menza, Mustaine, and Ellefson from the 90s. Amazing musicianship. So tons of great stuff. Definitely Megadeth, greatest band of all time for me. You know, you can give me your top 10 in the comments. Maybe like give me a suggestion on any top 10 lists you might want to see. You know, albums ranked by a certain band. Maybe an album review if you want. So yeah, thanks for watching, and until next time.